"If have the money, I'll pay triple," said manager, laughing, until the old man reveals a secret. The midday sun beat down on the streets of downtown Austin, Texas, as Jack Miller stepped out of a dusty white Ford F-150 pickup, the kind you see rumbling down rural Texas roads. His broken straw hat shielded a face weathered by a lifetime outdoors, and his worn-out cowboy boots still carried traces of the red dirt that characterized the region. At 65, his calloused hands told stories of decades of hard work, and the simple Casio on his wrist marked commitments that went far beyond his humble appearance. The branch of the Southwest Regional Bank on Congress Avenue was a stark contrast to everything Jack represented: polished marble, frigid air conditioning, and the typical hustle and bustle of one of the main financial arteries of the Texan capital. Well-dressed clients moved between tellers, discussing loans for their businesses and investments. "Morning," Jack said to the receptionist, respectfully removing his hat. Chloe, 23, looked up from her computer and barely managed to hide her surprise. The daughter of a middle-class family from Austin, she was used to the sophisticated clientele of the branch. This man completely clashed with the environment. "Yes, sir?" "Jack Miller. I need to make a transfer." She typed the name into the system but frowned. There were several people with that name at the bank. "Do you have an account here, sir?" "Yes, honey, I do." The movement in the branch seemed to pause at that moment. Robert Thompson, the owner of the city's largest car dealership, was waiting his turn, flipping through a magazine. Patricia Jones, the wife of an oil executive, was checking statements on her phone. Dr. Stephen Carter, a well-known doctor from the local high society, spoke in a low voice with a manager about investments. Everyone inevitably noticed the farmer's presence. "I'll get a manager for you," Chloe said, still processing the situation. Jack nodded and walked to the waiting area. The leather armchairs were comfortable, but he remained standing, observing the movement with the characteristic patience of someone who has learned that life has its own rhythm. Andrew Peterson appeared 5 minutes later. At 33, he was the personification of what he considered success: an impeccable Armani suit, imported shoes gleaming under the artificial light, a designer tie, and a Tag Heuer that had cost 3 months' salary. With an MBA from Harvard Business School, he was proud to be the youngest manager in the branch. And at that moment, he was visibly irritated. "Are you Jack Miller?" he asked, not even bothering to greet him. "That's me." Andrew looked Jack up and down like someone evaluating a clearance item. "And what can I do for you, sir?" "I need to make an international wire transfer." The request echoed through the branch like a gunshot. Robert Thompson looked up from his magazine. Patricia Jones interrupted her phone conversation. Dr. Stephen Carter turned completely around to watch the scene. Andrew let out a dry laugh. "International wire transfer? You know this isn't a joke, right? Do you have the paperwork? Proof of income?" Jack remained calm, as he always did. "I have everything you need. Let's go to my office then," Andrew said, more out of curiosity than a genuine willingness to help. The manager's office had a view of the bustling street. Framed diplomas decorated the walls, testifying to the academic background Andrew made sure to display. Jack sat in the chair in front of the glass desk, his hat resting in his lap. "So, Mr. Jack," Andrew began, emphasizing the informal address with barely disguised contempt, "what would be the amount of this, transfer?" Jack looked him directly in the eye. $15 million. The silence that followed was deafening. Andrew blinked several times as if he needed to process what he had just heard. Then, inevitably, he started to laugh. $15 million? Are you serious?" "Completely serious." Andrew leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. The arrogance he always showed with modest clients surfaced unfiltered. "Listen, Mr. Jack, I know people from the country like to dream big, but $15 million isn't the kind of money a small farmer who barely knows how to use a computer has." The humiliation was just beginning, but Jack remained motionless, observing every word, every gesture. He had learned a lot about people over the years, and Andrew Peterson was revealing himself to be exactly as he expected. "And what would you do with all that money?" Andrew continued, as if mocking a child. "Invest it in commodities on the Chicago Board of Trade." Andrew's laughter echoed in the office. "Chicago Board of Trade? You probably don't even know what that is." It was then that Andrew made the mistake that would change his life forever. He got up from his chair, went to the door, and opened it on purpose so that everyone in the branch could hear. "Folks," he shouted into the common area, "we have a farmer in here who wants to transfer $15 million to invest in Chicago." The laughter started immediately. Chloe let out a nervous giggle. Robert Thompson shook his head in disbelief. Patricia Jones murmured something to the person she was talking to on the phone. Dr. Stephen Carter said aloud, "That's a good one." Andrew returned to the office with a triumphant smile. "Look, Mr. Jack, I'll make you a deal. If you actually have all that money in the account, I'll pay you double your transfer from my own pocket." The laughter in the branch increased in volume. Andrew felt he was in complete control of the situation, showing off in front of the important clients who admired his cleverness in dealing with simple folk. Jack was silent for a long moment, just observing. His calloused hands rested on his hat, and his small but piercing eyes studied Andrew like a farmer analyzes a field before harvest. "All right," he finally said, with his characteristic simplicity. "Let's look at my account." Andrew laughed once more and turned on the computer with theatrical gestures. "Let's get this joke over with." He typed in the social security number Jack had provided and waited for the system to load. The screen flickered a few times before showing the account details, and it was at that moment that Andrew's smile began to fade. His eyes widened as he saw the numbers on the screen. The movement in the branch continued as normal, but inside that office, the world had stopped. This can't be right," Andrew murmured, refreshing the screen. But the numbers remained unchanged. Jack Miller didn't have just 15 million in his account. He had much, much more than that. And he was just beginning to show who he really was. Andrew stared at the computer screen as if he was seeing a ghost. The numbers danced before his eyes, defying everything he considered logical. Jack Miller's account balance didn't lie. There were enough funds there to buy the branch itself twice over. "It must be a system error," he muttered, trying to maintain his composure. Jack watched in silence, with the patience of someone who had already been through worse humiliations and knew that the truth always comes to light. His boots, dirty with red dirt, contrasted with the shiny office floor, but his presence of mind remained unshakable. "It's not an error, son," he finally said. "It's a lifetime of work." Andrew refreshed the screen again, as if that would make the numbers disappear. His academic background had not prepared him for this moment. All the concepts he had learned at Harvard Business School about customer profiles seemed irrelevant in the face of this seemingly simple farmer. "But how? Do you actually have 15 million to transfer?" "I do, and a lot more than that." The office phone rang, interrupting the tense moment. Andrew answered with a trembling voice. "Management, Andrew speaking." "Andrew, it's the regional director from Dallas," the voice on the other end said. "I need to talk about client Jack Miller. Is he there?" Andrew swallowed hard. "Yes, sir." "Perfect. I want you to give him the best service possible. He's one of our most important clients. He moves millions monthly and is a significant shareholder in the bank." Andrew's blood ran cold. He looked at Jack, who remained calm, as if this call were just a confirmation of the obvious. "Understood, sir," he managed to say. "And Andrew? Any problem with his service will land on my desk personally." The call ended, leaving the office in a silent vacuum. Andrew slowly let the phone drop into its cradle, feeling the weight of his arrogance transform into panic. You're a shareholder in the bank." Jack smiled for the first time, a small but meaningful smile. "I am. The main shareholder, to be exact." The words fell on Andrew like hailstones on a freshly planted field. 43% of the Southwest Regional Bank's shares belonged to the man he had publicly humiliated minutes before. I didn't know." "You didn't know, because you didn't ask. You saw a man in simple clothes and thought you knew everything about him." Andrew tried to compose himself, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. "Mr. Miller, I'm so sorry. You don't have to apologize to me," Jack interrupted, getting up from the chair. "How you should apologize to all the simple folk you've humiliated in this branch, to the farm workers who came here looking for financing and were treated like beggars." Andrew felt the ground slip out from under his feet. Every humble client he had scorned, every farmer he had treated with disdain, every worker he had considered inferior, now passed through his mind like a horror movie. "I'll make the transfer," Andrew said, trying to salvage what was left of the situation. "You won't," Jack replied, putting his hat back on. "I'm going to call someone competent to do it." He left the office, leaving Andrew paralyzed. The branch was still busy, but Jack now walked with a different presence. He was no longer the humble farmer looking for service. He was the owner of the institution evaluating the service. Chloe, at the reception, noticed the change immediately. "Mr. Miller, how can I help you? I need to speak to Anna Davis." Anna Davis, 28, a graduate in accounting from the University of Texas, was known in the branch for her integrity and competence. She had stood out for treating all clients with the same respect, regardless of their appearance or social status. "Mr. Miller," she greeted him warmly. "It's so good to see you. How's the family?" Robert Thompson, who was watching the scene from the waiting room, frowned. How did an employee know this farmer by name? Patricia Jones interrupted her phone conversation again, intrigued. Dr. Stephen Carter discreetly moved closer, trying to listen in on the conversation. "The family's good, Anna. I need to make an international wire transfer." "Of course. Shall we go to my office?" Andrew came out of his office at that moment, still visibly shaken. He saw Jack heading to Anna's office and felt a pang of panic. If the employee personally knew the main shareholder, his career was more threatened than he imagined. "Anna," Andrew called out, trying to intervene. "I was already assisting Mr. Miller." Anna looked at him in surprise. "Oh, really? That's great. I'm sure you gave Mr. Miller the VIP treatment he deserves." The sarcasm in Jack's voice was subtle, but devastating. "It was an unforgettable service." Andrew felt the blood drain from his face. Anna noticed the tension immediately. "Did something happen?" "Nothing important," Jack said. "Just a small demonstration of how some employees treat clients based on appearance." Anna knew Andrew's reputation well. She had witnessed several situations where he mistreated simple clients, always prioritizing those who wore expensive clothes and drove imported cars. "Mr. Miller, I'm very sorry if there was a problem." "The problem isn't with me, Anna. It's with the image this branch is transmitting to the community." Robert Thompson couldn't contain himself anymore. He got up and approached. "Excuse me, may I ask who you are?" Jack looked at him with the same serenity he had shown throughout the humiliation. "Jack Miller. And who are you?" "Robert Thompson from Thompson Autos, one of the biggest dealerships in the city." "Oh yes, the dealership that has financing approved by our bank." The "our bank" didn't go unnoticed. Robert felt a chill. "Our bank? I'm the main shareholder of this institution, Mr. Thompson." The impact was immediate. Robert turned pale. Patricia Jones choked on the coffee she was drinking. Dr. Stephen Carter dropped the magazine he was reading. The entire branch seemed to have heard the revelation. Andrew, still standing near the group, felt the world come crashing down on him. "And now," Jack continued, "I'm going to find out exactly how my employees treat the clients who need respect the most." Chloe at the reception murmured to a colleague, "I always said Andrew was too arrogant," but Jack wasn't finished. He pulled a tablet from his shirt pocket, the same pocket Andrew had judged inadequate for carrying anything more sophisticated than a pen, and began to display documents. "For those who are curious," he said loudly so everyone could hear, "here are the Texas Secretary of State records that prove my shareholding in the bank." The tablet screens showed official documents, financial reports, and records that left no room for doubt. Jack Miller was not just rich, he was one of the most powerful men in the Texan agricultural sector. 15,000 acres between Austin, Waco, and San Antonio, he continued, swiping through the screens. One of the largest cattle exporters in the state, an investor in wineries and oil presses. Andrew felt his legs give way. Robert Thompson started sweating cold. Patricia Jones and Dr. Stephen Carter looked at each other in a panic, knowing they depended on the bank for their businesses. But the most devastating revelation was yet to come. "And of course," Jack said, putting the tablet away, "someone who has personally decided who stays and who goes from this branch." The silence that followed was deadly. Andrew knew his career was over the moment he underestimated the farmer in simple clothes, and Jack Miller still had a lot to show about the power of humility and the strength of truth. Jack walked out of the branch under the stunned gazes of everyone present. The scorching Austin sun didn't bother him. He was used to working in temperatures that would make executives in suits faint. He got into the F-150 and drove slowly through the streets of the city he had helped build economically. As he waited for the light at the intersection of Congress and Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, his memories traveled back 50 years. Jack was 15 when he left his parents' home in a small town outside Waco. John Miller Zimontil and I, Mrs. Rosegout had worked the fields since he could remember, leaving before the sun came up and returning when the stars were already shining in the sky. The two-room house housed 5 children, and Jack, being the oldest, knew he had to seek opportunities. "My son," Mrs. Rose said the morning he left, "remember that education is the only thing no one can take away from you." "Yes, Mom. And remember, I'll send you money every month." John Miller, a man of few words, just squeezed his son's hand tightly. "Always be honest. Life will teach you the rest. With a cardboard suitcase and $50 in his pocket, Jack got on the bus to Austin. The city was bustling with the growth of the agricultural sector, and construction offered opportunities for those willing to work hard. He got a job as an assistant on a construction site downtown, 12 hours a day carrying cement bags, climbing scaffolding, learning the mason's trade. At night he attended a popular course at the community college where he studied with the same determination he put into his work. It was there that he met Mary, a public school teacher who volunteered to teach classes at the college. She saw something in this thin, quiet boy that no one else saw, a sharp intelligence and an unbreakable determination. "Jack," she told him one night after math class, "have you thought about investing?" "Investing in what, teacher?" "Stocks, companies. The country is growing, and those who get in now can reap the rewards in the future." Mary patiently explained how the stock market worked. Jack absorbed every word like a dry sponge absorbs water. With his first full paycheck, he bought his first shares in Ford and Bank of America. "Every month, buy a little," Mary advised him. "Even if it's a small amount, time works in favor of those who are patient." Jack followed the advice religiously. While his colleagues spent their salaries on beer and football, he studied financial reports at the public library and reinvested every cent he had left over. By the time he was 25, he was a foreman and had a small but solid portfolio of stocks. It was then that he made the proposal that would change his life. "Mary, will you marry me?" "Jack, are you sure?" "I'm not a rich woman. You're rich in what matters. Intelligence, character, knowledge. We'll build the rest together." They married in a simple ceremony at a local church. Their honeymoon was a weekend in San Antonio, but to them, it felt like Paris. With their combined savings, they bought their first plot of land, 40 acres of good soil for cattle and crops. Jack applied everything he had learned about management in practice, while Mary handled the accounting with the precision of someone who had taught math all her life. "Jack, look," Mary said one afternoon in 1985, showing him the calculations. "If we keep this up, in 10 years we'll have 500 acres. And in 20? In 20, my love, you'll be one of the biggest ranchers in the region." Mary underestimated her husband's skills. In 15 years, Jack already owned 3,000 acres and had diversified his investments. Wineries, oil presses, bank shares, all a product of a sharp strategic vision and tireless work. When the Southwest Regional Bank went through financial difficulties in the late 90s, Jack saw an opportunity that others considered madness. "You're going to invest in a failing bank?" a neighboring rancher asked. "It's not failing. It's mismanaged." "It's different." Jack bought shares when no one wanted to, gradually becoming the main shareholder. Under his discreet direction, the bank specialized in the agricultural sector and grew along with the boom in commodities. Mary had passed away 5 years earlier, a victim of cancer that not all the money in the world could cure. Jack kept her ring on his finger and her photo in his wallet, always remembering her advice on humility and character. "Money is a tool, Jack," she told him in her last days. "Don't let it change you." The traffic light turned green, bringing Jack back to the present. He drove to his main ranch, where the large house contrasted with the simplicity of his clothes. Employees greeted him with genuine respect. It wasn't fear, it was admiration for a boss who had never forgotten his origins. He sat on the porch, watching the olive grove that stretched to the horizon. The red dirt, the same that his parents had worked as day laborers, now belonged to him. But the satisfaction didn't come from the possession, but from the certainty that he had honored the memory of those who had raised him. The phone rang. It was Anna Davis, from the branch. "Mr. Miller, I'm sorry to bother you. Do you still want to make the transfer?" "Yes, Anna. I'll stop by tomorrow morning." "Mr. Miller?" "Yes, honey. Andrew is very nervous. I think he's understood the seriousness of the situation." Jack was silent for a moment, watching the sunset paint the olive trees golden. "Anna, you know the difference between a person of character and a person without character." "What is it, Mr. Miller?" "The person of character treats everyone well because it's the right thing to do. The person without character only treats well those who can hurt them." "I see. Andrew will learn that lesson. The easy way or the hard way." He hung up the phone and stayed on the porch until the stars appeared. Tomorrow he would return to the branch, but not as the humiliated farmer who had left. He would return as the owner who was going to teach a lesson about respect and dignity. The red dirt didn't lie, and neither did Jack Miller. Andrew Peterson couldn't sleep. Lying in his bed in his downtown Austin apartment, financed by the same bank Jack Miller controlled, He stared at the white ceiling as he processed the magnitude of his mistake. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the farmer's serene face enduring the humiliations with a dignity he had never possessed. At 5 in the morning, he gave up trying to sleep. He brewed the premium coffee he used to brag about, put on his best suit, and headed to the branch 2 hours early. He needed time to think about a survival strategy. The building was still empty when he arrived. He sat in his office, surrounded by the diplomas that had once filled him with pride and now seemed to mock his arrogance. The Harvard Business School master's degree had not taught him to recognize the value of people. His education in economics had not prepared him to understand that true success goes far beyond appearances. Anna Davis arrived at 7, surprised to find Andrew already at work. "You're in early today." "I couldn't sleep." She noticed his nervousness and felt a pang of satisfaction. She had witnessed Andrew humiliate farm workers, retirees, and small business owners. Seeing him finally facing the consequences of his arrogance was a long-awaited justice. "Anna," Andrew said, trying to sound casual, "do you know Mr. Jack Miller well?" "Yes. He's been a client of the branch for over 15 years. Always polite, punctual, and very respectful to all employees." "And did you know that he's the main shareholder?" "Everyone knows that, Andrew, except you, apparently." The criticism was direct and painful. Andrew realized that his ignorance about his own clients was blatant. "How was I supposed to know? He dresses like any farm worker." "And what's wrong with that?" Anna challenged him firmly. "Do you think valuable people have to be dressed up as rich to deserve respect?" Andrew didn't know how to respond. His concept of success had always been linked to ostentation, status, the external symbols of wealth. The idea that someone could have real power and choose simplicity was something his mind couldn't process. At 8, the branch opened as usual. Chloe, at the reception, seemed tense. Robert Thompson arrived earlier than usual, clearly worried about the repercussions of the day before. Patricia Jones avoided eye contact with Andrew, as if she feared catching his incompetence. At 9, Jack Miller parked the F-150 in front of the branch. Andrew saw him through the window and felt a knot in his stomach. The farmer wore the same simple clothes as the day before, the same broken hat, and maintained the same humble posture. But now Andrew knew who was really walking into his branch. "Good morning," Jack said to Chloe, politely removing his hat. "Good morning, Mr. Miller. You have priority. You can go directly to any teller." Jack smiled. "Thanks, honey, but I'd rather wait like any other client." He sat in the waiting area, his hat in his lap. His presence completely transformed the atmosphere of the branch. The employees moved with more attention. The clients spoke in quieter tones, and Andrew remained paralyzed in his office. Anna Davis approached. "Mr. Miller, can I help you?" "Yes, Anna. But first, I want to speak to Andrew." Andrew's blood ran cold. He saw Anna heading to his office with a smile that mixed compassion and irony. "He wants to talk to you." Andrew adjusted his tie, ran a hand through his hair, and walked to the waiting area with trembling legs. All eyes in the branch followed him. "Mr. Miller," he said, trying to maintain his composure, "can we talk in private?" "You can talk right here. I have nothing to hide from anyone." Andrew looked around. Robert Thompson watched intently. Patricia Jones pretended to read a brochure. Dr. Stephen Carter was waiting his turn in a nearby armchair. Chloe and other employees hid their curiosity. "Mr. Miller, I'd like to apologize for what happened yesterday." Jack studied him in silence for long seconds. "And what exactly are you apologizing for?" The question was simple, but loaded with meaning. Andrew realized that Jack wanted to hear a full confession, not just a generic apology. "I apologize for having doubted you, for having treated you with disrespect." "And why did you treat me with disrespect?" Andrew felt sweat run down his back. The question forced him to admit his prejudices publicly. Because I judged you by your appearance." "And what's wrong with my appearance?" Each question was a sharp knife, cutting through Andrew's arrogance. Jack was not being cruel. He was being educational, forcing the manager to confront his own values. "Nothing," Andrew murmured. "Nothing's wrong with it." "Then why did you treat me badly?" Andrew looked around again. Everyone was waiting for his answer. It was a moment of truth that would define not only his professional future, but his character as a person. "Because I'm prejudiced," he finally said, his voice barely audible. "Because I think simple people are less important." The silence that followed was devastating. Andrew had publicly admitted what everyone already knew, but what he had never acknowledged. Jack slowly got up. "Andrew, how old are you?" 33. "I'm 65. In all these years, I've learned one important thing. A person's value is not in the clothes they wear, the car they drive, or the diploma they have on the wall. Andrew lowered his head. A person's value is in the way they treat those who can do nothing for them. Jack put his hat back on his head. You humiliated me yesterday because you thought I couldn't hurt you. Today you're apologizing because you found out that I can. That's not a change of character, Andrew. It's just fear. The words echoed in the branch like a final sentence. Andrew felt the weight of the truth crush him completely. But, Jack continued, everyone deserves a second chance. The question is what you're going to do with yours. He left the branch, leaving Andrew devastated. Robert Thompson approached the manager. Andrew, are you okay? But Andrew couldn't answer. He was confronting, for the first time in his life, the person he really was. And he didn't like what he saw at all. Jack Miller had planted a seed that would change not just a career, but a soul. It remained to be seen if Andrew would have the courage to water it. Jack returned to the branch that same afternoon. But this time he was not alone. He was accompanied by a man in a sober suit. Dr. Frank Taylor, a lawyer specializing in banking law and a personal friend for over 2 decades. Mr. Miller, Chloe greeted him, now visibly more respectful. How can I help you? I need to speak to the branch manager, Mark Wilson. The local manager appeared in less than 2 minutes. At 45, he had run the unit for 8 years and knew the importance of Jack to the institution's bottom line. Mr. Miller, what a pleasure to have you here. I heard there was a little misunderstanding yesterday. It wasn't a misunderstanding, Mark. It was a character exposure. They headed to the manager's office, where Jack introduced Dr. Taylor. Mark, meet my lawyer. We're here to formalize some changes in the branch. Mark paled slightly. As manager, he knew Jack Miller had the power to implement any changes he wanted. What kind of changes? Jack leaned back in his chair, maintaining his simple posture that contrasted with the power he wielded. Andrew Peterson is fired for cause, reason, systematic disrespect for clients, and discriminatory behavior. Mark showed no surprise. He had received complaints about Andrew before, but the manager had always managed to justify himself. Now, with the main shareholder as a direct victim, there were no possible arguments. And Sarah Foster, the teller supervisor, is also fired, for the same reason. Sarah was known for following Andrew's lead, treating simple clients with disdain while flattering the wealthier ones. On the other hand, Jack continued, Anna Davis will be promoted to relationship manager, with a 40% salary increase and a share of the profits. Dr. Taylor opened the folder he was carrying. Here are the legal documents formalizing the decisions, all within labor laws. Mark signed without hesitation. He knew Anna's history well and knew the promotion was deserved. There's one more thing, Jack said. I want to implement a microloan program for small farmers and business owners in the region. Anna will be in charge of the project. Excellent idea, Mark nodded, relieved to see that the changes also brought positive aspects. Jack stood up. Oh, and Mark, I want mandatory training on humanized service for all employees. Hire the consulting firm of Professor Maria Soto from the University of Texas. I'll handle it immediately. They left the manager's office and returned to the common area of the branch. Andrew was still in his office, probably trying to process the day's events. Jack asked Chloe to call him. Andrew appeared quickly with the demeanor of someone expecting bad news. Andrew, Jack said without mincing words, you're fired. The impact was visible. Andrew swayed slightly as if he had been punched. Mr. Miller, There's nothing more to discuss. Dr. Taylor will explain the legal procedures. Andrew looked around. Robert Thompson watched the scene with a mix of shock and satisfaction. Patricia Jones murmured something to a friend. Dr. Stephen Carter shook his head, like someone seeing justice being served. But Mr. Miller, Andrew tried one last time, I can change, I can learn. Jack looked at him directly in the eyes. Yes, you can, Andrew, and I hope you learn, but it won't be here. Dr. Taylor approached with the termination papers. Mr. Peterson, everything is in accordance with labor laws. Your rights are guaranteed. Andrew signed the papers with trembling hands. 10 years of a banking career were ending because of 15 minutes of arrogance. Can I get my things? Yes, Jack said. And Andrew? Yes? Honestly, I hope you use this experience to become a better person. Andrew nodded and headed to his office for the last time. As he packed his belongings, he reflected on Jack's words. For the first time, he understood the difference between having a position and having character. Anna Davis was called next. Anna, would you accept a promotion to relationship manager? Her face lit up. "Of course, Mr. Miller. Thank you so much. The promotion is not a favor, it's a merit. You've always treated all clients with respect." Mark Wilson made sure to announce the promotion to the entire branch. "Folks, I want to announce that Anna Davis is our new relationship manager. I'm sure she will maintain the high standards of service our clients deserve." The employees applauded. Anna was well liked by everyone, and her promotion was met with genuine joy. Jack observed the scene with satisfaction. Justice was not just punishing those who were wrong, it was recognizing those who were right. Robert Thompson approached as Jack was heading for the exit. "Mr. Miller, can I have a word?" "Sure. I wanted to apologize for laughing yesterday. It wasn't right." Jack studied the businessman for a moment. "Robert, you laughed because Andrew created a spectacle, but you also chose to participate." Robert lowered his head, embarrassed. "It's true. The difference is you can choose to act differently next time. Andrew showed he didn't know how." Jack shook Robert's hand firmly. "Use this lesson, Robert. It's worth more than any financing." He left the branch, leaving behind a transformed institution. Anna Davis was already organizing her new office. Mark was planning the service training, and Andrew was carrying a box with his belongings toward an uncertain future. The red dirt had taught one more lesson. We reap what we sow. Andrew had sown disrespect and reaped humiliation. Anna had sown dignity and reaped recognition. And Jack Miller, who had sown humility his whole life, reaped the power to make a difference. 3 weeks after the firing, Andrew Peterson found himself in a situation he never would have imagined possible. The apartment downtown had 3 overdue payments. The Tag Heuer had been sold to pay basic bills, and job interviews multiplied with no results. The Austin financial market was small, and everyone already knew the story. No bank wanted to hire the manager who had humiliated the main shareholder of a competing institution. His reputation preceded him, closing doors even before he could explain himself. It was on a rainy Tuesday morning when Andrew saw an ad in the newspaper: "Macy's hiring salespeople. Experience in customer service." It was a brutal fall from the executive world to popular retail, but he had no other option. The interview was at the store on the Arboretum. The manager, Charles Edwards Kerr, 40, had started as a furniture salesman and knew the reality of those who needed to start over. "Andrew, I saw your resume. Good education. Banking experience. What brings you here?" Andrew had rehearsed several answers. Unemployment, a change of sector, new challenges. But when he looked into Charles's eyes, he chose the truth. "I was fired for cause, for prejudice against simple clients." Charles was surprised by the honesty. "And do you think you've changed?" "I'm learning. The hard way. The clientele here is very different from the banks. Workers, retirees, people who buy with the sweat of their brow. Will you be able to handle that?" Andrew thought about the last few months. The humility forced by circumstances had started to break his arrogance. "I want to try. I need to try." Charles hired Andrew as a home appliances salesman. The salary was a third of what he earned at the bank, but it was a new beginning. On his first day, Andrew faced the reality he had always despised. Mrs. Connie, a 68-year-old retiree, wanted to buy a new refrigerator to replace the one that had broken. "Young man, is this refrigerator good? I can't buy something that's going to give me problems." Andrew observed the woman. Grey hair, simple clothes, a genuine concern about the investment that represented months of savings. This was exactly the type of client he used to humiliate at the bank. "Do you live alone?" "No, with my grandson. He works at a garage." Andrew analyzed the available options and chose an intermediate model: a good quality-price ratio, reliable warranty, a respected brand. "This one would be perfect for you. It's affordable and has an excellent warranty." Mrs. Connie smiled. "You seem honest, young man. I'll take this one." It was the first time in years that Andrew felt genuine satisfaction in helping someone. There was no high commission or ambitious goal, just the sincere joy of a person who had managed to solve an important problem. Meanwhile, at the bank branch, Anna Davis was implementing the changes Jack Miller had suggested. The microloan program for small farmers was working above expectations. Family farmers who had never had access to formal financing could now invest in equipment and seeds. "Mr. Jones," Anna said to a farmer from Waco, "we've managed to approve your loan to buy the milking machine. It's $15,000 with subsidized interest." Jim Jones, 55, had raised dairy cattle on a small scale for 2 decades. He had never been able to get financing because he didn't have the guarantees that traditional banks required. "Ma'am, are you sure? I only have the deeds to 10 acres. It's enough, Mr. Jones. Mr. Miller said our mission is to support those who work with honesty. The program became a benchmark in the region. Small business owners from downtown Austin, farmers from neighboring towns, and even street vendors got credit to expand their businesses. Jack followed the results from his ranch, satisfied with the direction the branch had taken. 2 months after the firing, Andrew faced an even greater personal challenge. He had to leave the apartment and moved back in with his parents in the Tarrytown neighborhood, the same simple house he had left when he got his first job at the bank, ashamed of his humble origins. "Son," his mother, Mrs. Irene Hahn, said, "it's no problem that you're here. A mother's house always has a place." His father, Walter, a retired mechanic, was more direct. "Andrew, you needed a good fall. You were always so arrogant." The observation hurt, but it was true. Andrew began to realize that his family had always known his flaws, but had never confronted him. "Dad, how did you put up with me all these years?" "Because you're our son. But we always knew that one day life would teach you humility." At Macy's, Andrew was learning daily lessons. He met Mr. Mike, a bricklayer who saved for a year to buy a television for his family. He met Fern, a cleaner who wanted a washing machine so she wouldn't have to wash clothes in the sink. "Young man," Fern said, "you explain everything very well. You don't try to sell us expensive things we don't need." Charles Edwards noticed the change in Andrew. "You're adapting well. The customers appreciate you. I'm learning that selling to someone who really needs it is more rewarding than selling a product to someone who has too much money." One morning, Andrew was organizing the furniture section when he saw a familiar figure enter the store. Jack Miller walked through the aisles, observing the products and the service. Andrew's heart sped up. He didn't know whether to hide or approach. He decided to keep his distance and observe. Jack bought a simple refrigerator, not for himself, but to donate to the family of an employee on his ranch. Andrew watched the farmer speak respectfully with the salesman, ask relevant questions, and finalize the purchase without ostentation. As Jack headed for the exit, his eyes met Andrew's. For a moment, both were motionless. Then Jack approached. "Andrew, Mr. Miller." Jack observed the environment around him. Andrew's simple clothes, his salesman's badge, the complete change of context. "How are you?" "Learning, Mr. Miller. Learning a lot." Jack nodded slowly. "That's good. And what are you learning?" Andrew took a deep breath before answering. "That honest work has no hierarchy. That someone who serves a housewife well deserves the same respect as someone who serves a CEO." Jack studied Andrew's face, looking for signs of sincerity. "And do you really believe that?" "I'm starting to." Jack shook Andrew's hand firmly. "Keep learning, Andrew. Life still has a lot to teach you." He left the store, leaving Andrew emotional. For the first time since the firing, he felt that maybe there was hope for redemption. The seed of humility planted in humiliation was beginning to germinate in the fertile soil of adversity. The story of the humiliation at the bank branch spread through Austin like wildfire. At the local diner, a meeting place for farmers, the topic dominated morning conversations. "Did you hear what happened to Jack Miller at the bank?" commented Bob Green, the owner of a cattle ranch in Bastrop. "So of course," replied Tom White, president of the Texas Cattlemen's Association. The manager who humiliated him was fired on the spot. The versions multiplied and amplified. Some said Jack had bought the entire bank just to fire Andrew. Others swore the farmer donated millions to charities after the incident. The truth was mixed with legend, but the essence remained. Whoever humiliates an honest worker pays the price. At the headquarters of the Farmers Union, the conversation was more serious. "This story shows why we respect Jack," said the president, Dr. Mark Smith. "He never forgot where he came from. He's different from that bunch of new money running around." A rancher from San Antonio nodded. "Jack Miller has roots, he has character." At the Austin Country Club, the local elite discussed the case with concern. Many depended on financing from the Southwest Regional Bank for their businesses, and finding out they had looked down on the main shareholder gave them chills. "No one knew he owned the bank," Patricia Jones justified to a group of friends at the salon. "But everyone knew that laughing at anyone is bad manners," replied Melissa Young, the wife of a large farm owner. Regardless of who it was, Dr. Stephen Carter, who had witnessed the scene at the branch, became a kind of official witness to the events. "I saw everything," he would tell anyone who would listen. "The man just stood there, polite, while he was being humiliated. Only later did he show who he really was." The story reached the local newspapers. The Austin American Statesman, published an article about the importance of respect in banking service without citing names, but making it clear that it was based on recent events. The local news did a report on discrimination in the service sector. At the Southwest Regional Bank, the changes implemented by Jack were transforming the organization's culture. The humanized service training, provided by the consulting firm from the University of Texas, changed the perspective of the employees. The client is not just a source of income, Professor Maria Soto explained during the course. They are a person with needs, dreams, and dignity who deserves to be respected. Anna Davis led by example. Her management of the microloan program was being studied by other branches in the network as a model of financial inclusion. "We lent $50,000 to small farmers last month," she informed Jack during a follow-up visit. "The default rate is 0. Those who really need credit to work always pay." "That's what I expected," Jack smiled. "Hard-working people are the best credit risk there is." Mark Wilson, the manager, saw the results in the numbers. "Mr. Miller, our rural loan portfolio grew by 40% in 3 months. And most importantly, customer satisfaction is at 98%. Jack looked through the reports with satisfaction. "Mark, when you treat people with respect, they pay you back with loyalty. It's simple math." Andrew, at Macy's, continued his learning journey. 6 months after the firing, he had become one of the most appreciated salespeople in the store. His ability to explain complex products in a simple way, combined with a genuine honesty about the quality-price relationship, had won over the clientele. "Andrew," Charles Edwards, the manager, said, "I want to propose something to you. How would you like to be a sales supervisor?" "Me, a supervisor? You've changed, man. The clients trust you, the other salespeople respect you. It's a deserved promotion." Andrew thought about the irony. Months earlier, he had lost a managerial position for treating simple clients badly. Now he was getting a supervisory role precisely for treating them well. "I accept, but on one condition." "What is it?" "I want to implement training on respectful service for the whole team." Charles smiled. "Done." At the end of the year, the Austin Chamber of Commerce organized a charity dinner. Jack Miller was invited as the patron of the event, which would raise funds for Dell Children's Medical Center. The city's elite attended in droves. Business owners, farmers, politicians, and professionals filled the Austin Convention Center ballroom. Many wanted to get close to Jack. Others sought to redeem themselves from hasty judgments. Robert Thompson, from the dealership, made sure to greet Jack personally. "Mr. Miller, I want to thank you for the lesson you taught me. I've completely changed the service at my store." "How so, Robert?" "Now I treat every client who walks in the same, whether they're buying a Hyundai or a Cadillac. I discovered that sometimes the people with the most money are precisely the ones who dress most simply." Patricia Jones also approached, accompanied by her husband. "Mr. Miller, after that day at the branch, I started volunteering at Dell Children's Medical Center. It was an important lesson." Jack nodded respectfully. "I'm glad, Patricia. Helping those in need is always good for the soul." Dr. Stephen Carter had made even deeper changes. "Mr. Miller, I opened a community clinic in the East Side. I treat farm workers for free on Saturdays." "That's very noble, Doctor. You understood the message." During the dinner, Jack was invited to speak. He went up to the stage with the same simplicity as always. A simple suit, no ostentation, speaking as if he were talking to his neighbors. "Folks," he began, "thanks for the invitation. I want to talk about something simple, respect." The room fell silent. Austin has grown because it has always valued honest work. The farm worker, the bricklayer, the cleaner, the rancher, we're all part of the same machinery that moves our city. Many of those present reflected on their own attitudes. When we humiliate someone because of their appearance, we're forgetting that all of us have humble origins. My parents were day laborers. I was a bricklayer. There's no shame in that. The applause was warm and sincere. Money can buy a lot of things, but it can't buy character, and it's character that defines whether we're people of value or just people with money. Jack stepped down from the stage, leaving a moved audience. The lesson had extended far beyond the bank branch. It had planted seeds of reflection throughout the community. The red dirt of Austin was germinating a harvest of humility and respect. And Jack Miller, the multi-millionaire farmer who never forgot his roots, was the farmer of that social transformation. A year after the incident at the branch, Austin breathed a different air. The changes planted by Jack Miller had germinated into a social transformation that surprised even the most optimistic. The Southwest Regional Bank branch had become a national model for humanized service. Anna Davis received the Manager of the Year award from the American Bankers Association, a recognition that gave visibility to the inclusive practices she had implemented. "Mr. Miller," Anna told him during a results meeting, "our branch has become a case study at Harvard Business School. They want to understand how we improved our satisfaction indicators so much." Jack looked through the reports with paternal pride. "Anna, you planted that seed. I just prepared the ground." The microloan program had financed over 200 small businesses. Mr. Mike, the bricklayer Andrew had met at Macy's, got a loan to buy tools and expand his business. Mrs. Connie, the retiree who bought the refrigerator, used her banking relationship to finance a small homemade candy business. Mark Wilson, the manager, saw in the numbers the confirmation that humanity and profit could go hand in hand. Our individual client portfolio grew by 60%. The bank had never been so profitable and so well regarded at the same time. Andrew Peterson was completing his first year as a supervisor at Macy's. The transformation was visible not only in his work, but in his entire attitude toward life. His clothes were simple but dignified, his gestures respectful to everyone, and his way of speaking had lost the arrogance that characterized him. "Andrew," Charles Edwards, the manager, said, "I want to give you some news. Regional management has approved your transfer to the downtown store. It's a significant promotion." "Me? Downtown?" Charles was surprised. The downtown store was considered the most prestigious in the chain in Austin. "Why?" "Because here is where I learned who I really am, and I like serving the clientele here." Andrew had found a purpose in helping people who genuinely needed the products he sold. Each refrigerator sold to a simple family, each piece of furniture financed for a young couple, represented the real difference his work could make. Mrs. Irene, his mother, had noticed the change. "Son, you're different, more human." "Life taught me humility, Mum, the hard way." Walter, his father, was even more direct. "I always said you needed a good fall. Now you've become a good man." Jack Miller maintained his simple routine on the ranch, but now he received constant visits from business owners, students, and journalists who wanted to understand his philosophy of management. A university in New York had invited him to give a conference on transformational leadership in emerging economies. "Professor Williams," Jack said to the coordinator of the management course, "are you sure you want a farmer who barely finished high school to talk to university students?" "Mr. Miller, you have taught more about management in 5 minutes than many PhDs in entire semesters." The conference was scheduled for a Saturday morning. The university auditorium was filled with students, professors, and business people. Jack went up to the stage in a simple button-down shirt and jeans, the same simplicity he had always maintained. "Folks," he began, "I'm going to tell you a story that happened a year ago and changed a lot of people." For an hour, Jack narrated the events at the bank branch, Andrew's firing, the changes implemented, and the lessons learned. But it wasn't a story of revenge. It was a lesson about second chances and transformation. Andrew Peterson is a respected supervisor in his company today, not because he got another job, but because he became another person. The audience was captivated. True leadership is not about humiliating those below you. It's about lifting up those who have fallen. Robert Thompson from the dealership had implemented profound changes in his company. He created a training program on equal service and set goals not only for sales but for customer satisfaction. "Mr. Miller," Robert said to him during a casual street encounter, "our rating on social media went from 6.2 to 9.1. Customers notice when they're treated with respect." "Robert, respect is an investment that never loses money." Dr. Stephen Carter had expanded his community clinic. What started as free service on Saturdays turned into a social project that served 200 families a month. Dr. Mrs. Rose, a day laborer's wife, thanked him. "You saved my husband. If it weren't for the free care, he would have died." Stephen felt a satisfaction he had never experienced in his expensive private clinics. "Mrs. Rose, the one being saved here is me." Patricia Jones now coordinated an adult literacy project at Dell Children's Medical Center. Women and men who never had the opportunity to study attended night classes taught by volunteers. Professor Jones, Joe, a 45-year-old bricklayer, said, "I managed to read my loan contract. It's the first time in my life I've signed something, knowing what I'm signing." Patricia discovered that teaching was more rewarding than attending parties at the country club. Mark Wilson had been promoted to National Director of Humanized Service at the Southwest Regional Bank. His mission was to replicate the Austin model in all 200 bank branches across the country. "Mr. Miller," Mark said during a meeting at the ranch. "Our model is being studied by banks from other countries. A delegation from Germany is coming to visit the branch next month." Germans studying an American bank? What world is this? The world where humanity becomes a competitive advantage, Mr. Miller. They want to understand how we've managed to reconcile high profitability with social responsibility. Jack shook his head, amused. "Mark, do you think they'll understand that the secret is simply treating people well? Maybe it will seem too simple to them. Sometimes the most obvious solutions are the hardest to accept." At the end of that year, the city of Austin organized a ceremony to honor Jack Miller as favorite son of the city. The event brought together hundreds of people at the Paramount Theater, transformed employees, sensitized business owners, beneficiaries of social projects. "Folks," Jack said in his thank you speech, "this medal is not mine. It belongs to everyone who believed that one person can make a difference." The audience was full of familiar faces: Andrew and his family, Anna with her children, Dr. Stephen and Patricia, Robert Thompson, hundreds of simple people who had been touched by the experience of being treated with dignity. "When I was a boy in Texas," Jack continued, "my mother taught me that today we plant what we will harvest tomorrow. I never imagined that a simple visit to the bank would plant such a beautiful harvest." The applause echoed in the historic theater, and Jack was moved to see tears in Andrew's eyes. "I want to share this medal with three special people: Andrew, who proved that everyone can change; Anna, who showed that competence and humanity go hand in hand; and with all of you, who transformed an individual lesson into a collective change." When he stepped down from the stage, Jack was surrounded by people who wanted to thank him, share stories, and ask for advice. But the one who moved him the most was a humble woman who approached him at the end. "Mr. Miller, I'm Mrs. Rosie, the mother of Joe, who works on your ranch." Jack recognized her immediately. She was the widow who lived in a simple house on the back of his property, raising her 3 grandchildren alone. "Mrs. Rose, how are you?" "Well, Mr. Miller, I wanted to thank you for what you did for my grandson, Peter." Jack frowned, trying to remember. "The boy who got the scholarship to study agricultural technology, remember? Thanks to the program Anna created at the bank." Now Jack remembered. Anna had created a scholarship program for the children of farm workers, funded by the profits from the microloans. "Mrs. Rose, Peter earned that scholarship. I just helped create the opportunity. Mr. Miller, my grandson is going to be the first in our family to get a degree. Because of you, our family has changed forever." Jack hugged Mrs. Rose with tears in his eyes. It was precisely because of moments like this that all the struggle was worth it. 6 years after the incident at the branch, Jack Miller received an invitation that surprised him. Harvard University wanted him to participate in a symposium on transformational leadership in emerging economies. Business owners, academics, and politicians from around the world would gather to discuss how humanized practices can generate sustainable economic impact. "Professor Michaels," Jack said during the preparatory video conference, "are you sure Harvard wants a Texan farmer who barely finished high school? Mr. Miller, you have created a case study that our MBA students are studying. Your experience is worth more than any theory." Jack accepted the invitation, but set one condition. He wanted to bring Andrew and Anna as part of the presentation. "The story isn't mine," he explained. "It's all of ours." Andrew, now 43, and the director of a humanized management consulting firm, accompanied the meeting as a specialist in organizational transformation. His company advised multinational corporations on the implementation of ethical and sustainable practices. "Mr. Miller," Andrew said when he found out about the Harvard invitation, "I can't believe it. From a fired salesman to a Harvard speaker. Andrew, you deserve it. Your transformation inspires thousands of people. But I'll never forget that it all started when you taught me humility the hard way." Jack smiled. "And I'll never forget that you had the courage to learn." Anna Davis, now the National Director of Microloans at Chase Bank, had become a reference in financial inclusion. Her model was being replicated in 15 countries in Latin America and Africa, benefiting over 2 million families. "Anna," Jack said, "can you imagine talking at Harvard?" "I can imagine talking about the small farmers from Waco who changed my view of the world," she replied, laughing. "That's exactly what you need to talk about. Harvard needs to meet Jim with the milking machine and Fern the cleaner." The flight to Boston was Jack's first international trip. Andrew and Anna accompanied him, all equally nervous and excited. "Mr. Miller," Andrew said during the flight, "are you nervous?" "A little. but I remember that I'm going to represent the hard-working people of the country. That gives me strength. What if they ask you very technical questions? Andrew, I'll speak from the heart. They already know about technique. Humanity is what they need to learn. Harvard impressed him with its historic buildings and academic atmosphere, but Jack felt right at home when he met other speakers. A Kenyan business owner who created rural microloans, an Indian who developed technology for small farmers, a Colombian who turned former guerrillas into entrepreneurs. We're all in the same business, Jack told the group during dinner. The business of human dignity. Professor Michaels was impressed by Jack's simplicity and depth. Mr. Miller, our students spend 2 years learning complex theories. You learned the same lessons through real-life experience. Professor, theory is important, but theory without heart is just math. Jack's presentation was in the main auditorium, packed with 400 students and professors. He went up to the stage in a simple suit and carrying the same straw hat he had worn at the branch years earlier. Good afternoon. My name is Jack Miller. I'm a farmer from Texas, and I want to tell you the most important business lesson I've ever learned in my life. For an hour, Jack narrated the complete story, from the humiliation at the branch to the transformations that followed. But what impressed the audience most were the numbers he presented. 1,000 small farmers financed with a 2% default rate. 500 families benefited from the literacy program. 10,000 employees trained in humanized sales. 2 million people indirectly impacted by the projects. The return on investment in human dignity, Jack concluded, is infinite and sustainable. Andrew spoke next, narrating his personal transformation and the business results he had achieved. I learned that humble clients are loyal clients. When you respect people who have little, they become ambassadors for your brand. A student asked, how do you measure the ROI of respect? Easy, Andrew replied. Our stores with humanized service have 40% more client retention and 25% higher profit margins. Anna Davis presented the data from the microloan program, translated into a global context. We proved that financial inclusion is not charity, it's good business. People with fewer resources are an excellent credit risk when they're given the right support. A professor questioned, how do you scale this model globally? You start with one person at a time, Anna replied. Each beneficiary becomes a multiplier of opportunities. During the debate that followed, the questions were intense but respectful. Students wanted to understand how to implement humanized practices in large corporations. Professors questioned the economic sustainability of the model. Mr. Miller, a Chinese student asked, do you think this approach only works in small communities? Jack reflected before answering. Young man, respect has no size limit. What changes is the scale, not the principle. But how do you maintain the personal touch in large organizations? You train leaders to be multipliers of dignity. One person teaches 10, 10 teach 100, 100 teach 1,000. After the presentation, Jack was surrounded by students and professors who wanted to delve deeper into the conversations. But the one who made the biggest impact was Sarah Chen, an MBA student from a humble background who had worked in factories before getting a scholarship to Harvard. Mr. Miller, your story gives me hope. Sometimes I feel like I don't belong here. Sarah, you belong anywhere. Your character and competence can make a difference. But how do I stay humble when I'm surrounded by privilege? Jack smiled and put a hand on her shoulder. Remember where you came from and use your position to help others climb the same mountain. On their last day in Boston, Jack, Andrew, and Anna visited a social project in a city neighborhood. It was an organization that offered microloans to Latino immigrants, very similar to what they were doing in Texas. We heard about your work, said Maria Rodriguez, the project coordinator. Your model inspired our approach here. Jack was moved to realize that the seeds planted in Austin had germinated in Boston. Maria, this proves that good ideas travel faster than airplanes. On the flight back to Texas, the three reflected on the experience. Mr. Miller, Anna said, our story went farther than we imagined. Anna, true stories know no borders. Andrew watched the clouds through the window. Mr. Miller, can I make a confession? Of course. When I was arrogant, I thought success was about impressing people. Today I know that success is about impacting people. Jack smiled. Andrew, you've discovered the difference between having a position and having a purpose. Disuana. Epilogue. The Infinite Harvest. 15 years after the incident at the bank branch, Jack Miller, now 80, sat on the same porch of the ranch where he had always liked to drink coffee, watching the plantation. But now, in addition to the olive trees and vines that stretched to the horizon, he contemplated an even more precious harvest. The UN program, based on his methodology, had benefited 50 million people in 60 countries. Andrew coordinated the implementation in multinational companies, teaching executives that humility is a competitive strategy. Anna led microloan programs that served 200 million families globally. Dr. Stephen Carter had received the Nobel Peace Prize for his network of solidarity medicine. Patricia Jones coordinated popular education programs in 30 countries. Robert Thompson had expanded his inclusive business model throughout Latin America. But Jack's greatest satisfaction came from the small daily transformations. Peter, Jim's grandson, was now a UN Undersecretary for Rural Development. Fern, the cleaner who bought the washing machine, was now a veterinarian leading family farming programs at the World Bank. "Professor Miller," Fern said during a visit, "do you know how many people have been directly or indirectly impacted by the story of the branch?" "How many?" "Over 500 million worldwide, and the number is growing exponentially." Jack shook his head, marveling at the consequences of a simple lesson about human respect. Andrew, now a global specialist in organizational transformation, had written a book that had become a bestseller, From Arrogance to Humility: How a Humiliation Taught Me to Lead. The book was studied at Harvard, MIT, and other universities as an example of authentic change. "Mr. Miller," Andrew said during his last visit, "my book is being translated into 30 languages. Andrew, you've become the world's professor of humility." "Professor Miller, I'm just telling our story. The real transformation was yours." "Andrew, the transformation was all of ours. I just created the opportunity." Anna Davis had been named the Global Director of Financial Inclusion at the World Bank. Her methodology based on human dignity was considered the most effective in the world for fighting poverty through microloans. "Professor Miller," Anna said, "our programs have a 98% success rate. Families that receive humanized microloans prosper in an average of 18 months. Anna, what's the secret to that success?" "The same one we learned in Austin. We treat the beneficiaries as partners, not as charity cases." On his 80th birthday, Jack received a surprise. Hundreds of people came to the ranch for a party organized by Andrew, Anna, and the entire transformed community. Present were the mayor of Austin, the governor of Texas, representatives from the UN, business owners who had implemented humanized management, beneficiaries of microloans from various countries, doctors from the Solidarity Network, students from the community college. "Professor Miller," the mayor said during the speech, "Austin has become a world model for human development. Delegations from 100 countries have already visited our city to learn from your practices." Jack, emotional, thanked everyone for their presence. "Folks, this party is not mine. It belongs to all those who believe that a simple person can make a difference." He got up from his chair with some difficulty. Age had taken its toll, but his voice was still firm and clear. 15 years ago, I was humiliated at a bank branch for my simple clothes. Today we're celebrating that humiliation planted seeds that germinated all over the world." The audience listened in a respectful silence. "I learned that it doesn't matter where you were born, how much money you have, or what degree you hold. What matters is how you treat people, especially those who can do nothing for you." Jack looked at the faces around him. Andrew with his family, Anna with her children, Dr. Stephen and Patricia, Robert Thompson, hundreds of simple people who had been touched by the path of transformation. "I want to leave a message for the young people who are here," Jack continued. "You can change the world, one person at a time. You don't need an important position or a lot of money. You just need a heart willing to treat everyone with dignity." The applause echoed across the ranch, mixing with the birdsong and the sound of the wind in the plantation. When everyone left and night fell over the property, Jack stayed alone on the porch. He looked at the stars and murmured a prayer of gratitude. "Mary," he said, talking to his deceased wife, "we managed to make a difference. The seed you taught me to plant sprouted beyond our dreams." A gentle breeze moved the leaves of the trees, and Jack felt a deep peace. He knew his mission was accomplished. He had shown that humility is strength, that respect is wealth, and that a simple person can indeed transform the world. The red dirt of Texas would continue to germinate dignity for generations, and the story of the multimillionaire farmer who never lost his simplicity would be told forever as proof that the greatest human capital is the ability to treat everyone with love and respect. Jack Miller fell asleep on the porch, under the starry blanket of the Texas countryside, knowing that he had planted an eternal harvest of kindness and transformation in humanity.